The grand doors of Halcyon Symphony Hall opened for a man no one expected. A street busker with a battered violin case and rain still running off his frayed coat. Backstage, two young stagehands glanced up from their clipboards and exchanged the kind of look you give a stray dog that wandered in.
This is the candidate. The email didn't mention a costume.
We have 12 more auditions tonight. Let's just get through this.
That walk. The way he holds that old case. I know him.
He set the battered case on the polished stage floor. A single snicker echoed from the panel. He closed his eyes, not in prayer, but as if the room didn't exist. The bow touched string. Director Phillips' hand froze. Her pen rolled off the notepad, and she didn't notice. Conductor Marcus Delacroix reached behind him for the chair, as if his legs had forgotten how to stand. He sank into the red velvet, gripping the armrest, lips parted. Bradley Holtz removed his glasses, smeared now, and a single tear carved a path through his smirk. The passage wasn't technical brilliance. It was a wound opening, and the room couldn't look away.
What is happening to me? I haven't cried since my father's funeral. The street player is breaking something inside.
I've never heard such raw pain in a performance. What is this?
It's the cadenza from the Mendelssohn. The same one Kastner played when we were 13. How does he know it?
The final note shimmered, and before the echo died, Marcus Delacroix was on his feet.
Where did you get that violin? That sound doesn't come from a street corner. Tell me how you found it.
It belonged to my grandfather. He passed it down to me before he died. That's all.
Your grandfather? That instrument isn't a family heirloom from a barn somewhere. I know that tone.
You'd be surprised what a barn can hold, Maestro. Things get forgotten. People get forgotten.
This audition is suspended. I want to inspect that case before we continue. Now.
Maestro Delacroix, sit down. We will inspect the case after he finishes. Right now, you are interrupting an audition.
She doesn't see it. The old label, the way he holds that neck, it's him. It has to be.
The busker lifted the bow a second time. The piece he chose was not from any audition list. It was a lament written for wood that spoke.
A practice room. 14 years ago, Kastner played this same Bach chaconne while I stood in the door 8 bars behind, burning. He vanished before the Carnegie solo. We were told he cracked under pressure, but this man plays like he was never broken.
The notes fell like confession, not performance. Every phrase pulled air from the room until even the stage lights seemed to dim in reverence.
This is no audition. This is a man bleeding through an old piece of wood. We should be taking notes, not demands.
I laughed at his coat. I called him a costume, and he just made every recording I've praised sound like tin.
The final chord hovered, perfect and alone. When silence came back, it felt like an apology the room owed him.
We need to speak privately. Not about the chair. About what happened to a boy named Leo Kastner, who was supposed to play Carnegie at 12.
10 seconds of dead silence. Then Director Phillips rose from her chair, her voice carrying across the empty seats.
That instrument in your hands deserves the first chair. We haven't heard playing like this in 30 years.
He dipped his head a single time, acknowledgement, not acceptance, and closed the case.
Before chairs are offered, I need to know who I am hiring. That conversation happens now.
Lead the way, Maestro.
They left the stage, moving down a narrow backstage corridor, fluorescent light harsh on old plaster.
14 years, you vanished. Now you walk in here with a sound like that? I deserve to know why.
Maybe you deserve an answer, but not in front of a panel that just learned my name from you.
The conductor stopped at a rehearsal room door, unlocked it, and gestured inside.
Inside? We're not leaving until I see what's in that case.
He shut the door behind them, and the sound of the lock was louder than any note.
Don't play games with me. You are Leo Kastner, the prodigy who vanished. Say it.
I never denied it. Yes, I am Leo. What do you want, Marcus? An apology for being better than you when we were kids.
I want to know how you ended up on a street corner with a violin that shouldn't exist. That sound, I recognize more than you think.
Leo set the case on the upright piano, unbuckled the leather straps, and swung it open.
Let me see the label, right now.
The case yawned open, releasing the scent of aged spruce. Inside, a faded label delicate as a promise, pasted to the velvet beside it. A sepia photograph, a small boy with a violin, a first prize ribbon too big for his chest.
That label, Guarneri, 1742. My God, the missing Allard del Gesù. It wasn't lost, it was hidden with him. That boy in the picture is you. You had it all, the gift, the instrument, and you threw it away. Why, Leo?
You think I threw it away? You have no idea what it cost me to stand on that stage tonight.
Marcus ignored him and lifted the violin from the case, tilting the brittle label into the overhead light.
Guarneri del Gesù, 1742. The Allard. The world thought it was lost, but you've had it all along.
For one instant, the rehearsal room became a conservatory hallway, and two boys stood frozen in opposite roles. Young Leo Kastner, same violin, accepted first prize while Marcus watched from the doorway, fists white.
They called you a once-in-a-generation talent, and you were my greatest fear. Then you vanished. The night of Carnegie, they said you never showed. The whole classical world waited. What happened?
Maybe I realized some stages don't need another broken boy.
He placed the violin back in the velvet, fingers brushing the edge of the case like a man touching a grave.
You owe me more than riddles, Leo. I've been carrying your shadow for 14 years.
You? You think it was easy being the one who never showed. I didn't carry a shadow. I became one.
His hands, steady through the Bach, now shook against the piano lid.
The Carnegie stage manager told the media you were ill, but none of us believed it. What really stopped you?
The rehearsal room dissolved into a memory. Backstage at Carnegie, 14 years earlier, a boy in a miniature tuxedo, violin clutched to his chest, face white as the velvet curtain he couldn't part.
You froze. That's it, isn't it? The prodigy couldn't walk onto the stage.
Don't say it like a diagnosis. You don't know what it's like when 3,000 eyes feel like needles. Even now, just remembering it makes my throat close up.
He turned away and pressed his palm flat against the cold window, rain still streaking down outside.
Leo, I didn't know.
They walked back into the auditorium together, the panel still frozen in the aftershock of what they had heard.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am recommending Leo Kastner for the principal chair, effective immediately.
The contract is ready. It's everything you deserve. Salary, solo engagements, artistic control.
Leo looked at the paper, then lifted his eyes to the empty red seats of the hall he had once been too terrified to face.
The stage that broke me is offering a second chance, but I am not the boy they want anymore.
He set the worn case on the panel table, directly atop the contract, and spoke quietly.
I can't accept this.
A shocked silence. Then Bradley Holtz, still red-eyed and without his smirk, broke it.
What do you mean you can't? We're offering you the dream you threw away.
I came tonight to prove I could still play, not to return to the life that nearly killed me.
He walked off the stage without looking back, the contract still lying on the table like an unanswered question. His feet carried him to the only room that felt small enough. A practice studio at the end of the hall, window streaked with rain.
You can't just walk away and leave us with riddles. The truth. Leo, no more walls.
The truth? I haven't played for a seated audience in 14 years because every time I try, my hands lock. The fear, it never left. Even now, in this empty room, I can feel the phantom of those 3,000 eyes pushing against my skin.
For a splinter of a second, the small room became the wings of Carnegie again. A boy gripping the curtain, unable to step into the light.
On the street, nobody stops. They pass, they drop coins, they don't listen. That's the only way I can play when no one cares.
Marcus saw it then. The slight tremor in Leo's fingers, the shallow rise of his chest. This wasn't pride. It was a wound that never closed.
You've been punishing yourself all this time, hiding in plain sight.
I am not hiding anymore. I came back, but I can't be what you need. Not like this.
A long silence settled between them. But instead of breaking it, Marcus let it stretch until something shifted in his own chest.
Then don't be a soloist. The Symphony runs a youth outreach program. No stage, no reviews, just kids with cheap violins who need someone who actually hears them.
He glanced at the rain-streaked window, and then back at the violin in its worn case.
Teaching. No audience. Just the music and a room full of kids who haven't learned to judge yet.
For the first time that night, an image pushed through the fear. A rehearsal room filled with young faces, strings out of tune, and no critic in the dark. Leo walked to the small window and looked toward the empty main stage. The spotlight still on, his coat still damp on his shoulders.
They'd be beginners?
Some have never held a bow. They won't care about Carnegie. They'll just want to learn.
The weight in his chest didn't lift, but it cracked, just enough to let in a thin thread of something that wasn't fear.
I'll need to think about it.
The next morning, the hall smelled of wood wax and quiet. Leo walked through the marble lobby, case in hand, no rain on his coat. Instead of turning toward the stage, he climbed the stairs to the administrative offices.
You came back. I wasn't sure if we'd see you again.
I am not here for the chair, but I'll take the youth program if you still need a director.
Behind her, Marcus stood by the window, arms crossed, a quiet nod of support.
The program has been without a leader for months. The kids need someone who can meet them where they are.
I've spent 14 years on the street. I know what it's like to be invisible. Let me try.
She didn't hesitate. She put out her hand. Leo took it, and the worn leather of his case creaked against the desk as if exhaling.
For the first time in 14 years, I am not walking away from what could break me.
The rehearsal room smelled of resin and old carpet. When Leo walked in, the chatter died. A girl in the front row, dark braids, holding a viola, whispered to her neighbor.
Is that really our new teacher? He looks like he sleeps in that coat.
Leo ignored the whisper. He set the old case on a stand, popped the latches, and lifted out the guarneri. Under the harsh lights, the varnish looked like honey. Several students straightened in their chairs.
That's not a student violin. What is it?
A 1742 Guarneri. It's been through worse than me. But today, it's just a tool. Let's listen.
He placed the bow on the string and drew a single note. Not a performance, a question. The room answered with silence. Then he crouched beside Clara, guided her bow hand, and said,
Don't squeeze. Let the bow float. The music will come.
3 weeks later, the youth strings could tune their instruments without wincing. Leo had stopped being the stranger in a frayed coat and become something else entirely. Every afternoon, he knelt beside a struggling child, correcting a finger or tilting a scroll, never raising his voice.
I can't get this shift, Mr. Kastner. It sounds like a cat.
The shift isn't the problem. You are holding your breath. Let it out and let the arm move with you.
She exhaled, and the note settled. Her eyes widened, and a grin broke across her face like sun through clouds.
It worked. It actually sounded like music.
By the 4th week, they stopped avoiding the hard passages. A boy who wouldn't lift his bow above the frog 2 weeks ago now led his section. On a cold Tuesday, the whole ensemble played through a Bach chorale without losing tempo. Leo lowered his hand, and the silence that followed was no longer apology. It was respect.
These kids don't need a prodigy. They need someone who stayed when it got hard.
For the first time in years, Leo ended a day without looking for a street corner to disappear into. Marcus followed a sound he hadn't heard in this building for weeks, an ensemble playing together. He found it coming from the youth room and stopped at the door. Through the small window, he saw his old rival on one knee beside a girl with braids.
It still breaks up, Mr. Kastner.
Slower. Play it like you are telling someone a secret, not shouting it.
She inhaled, set the bow, and a thin, steady line of sound emerged. The room fell into a hush.
He talks about music the way I never could. Not as conquest, as breath. Maybe I was never chasing a rival. I was chasing a ghost I made up.
The tightness in Marcus's shoulders dissolved. He realized he was smiling. He stayed a moment longer, then slipped away before anyone noticed. But the image stayed with him. A man who had abandoned the stage, giving children the courage to walk onto their own. The class filed out, leaving Leo alone with the guarneri. He latched the case and stepped into the hallway. Marcus stood against the wall, arms loose, completely still. as if he had been waiting for a long time.
I saw you today. You are doing what I never could.
You conduct 100 musicians. I am just teaching 12 kids.
You are teaching them to listen. That's rarer than talent.
A silence opened between them, but it didn't hurt. Leo gave the slightest nod. More exhale than agreement. Marcus dipped his chin once, then turned toward the stage door, his footsteps fading into the larger silence. Leo stayed in the hall, the old case hanging at his side. Something inside him unlocked. Further down the corridor, a worn coat hung on a hook, and the battered violin case leaned against the wall, as if it had finally stopped traveling. That evening, long after the building emptied, Leo walked onto the main stage alone. He sat on the edge of the stage, the guarneri in his lap. He didn't lift the bow.
I used to think this room would swallow me, but it's just wood and velvet.
He looked out at the empty seats, row after row, and the silence didn't press on his chest. For the first time, the hall felt like a held breath, not a held sentence.
This is where I was supposed to be. Not the solo chair. The classroom.
He closed his eyes and simply breathed, the violin resting against his chest, the wood warm. When he opened his eyes, the overhead lights looked less like interrogation and more like a doorway. A faint smile crossed his face, not triumph. Recognition. He belonged here, not the chair, the story that led to it. The next morning, Clara stood in the rehearsal room, the melody she had been working on trembling on her bow.
I can play the notes, but it doesn't feel like yours. It feels empty.
Don't try to be me. The guarneri has spoken enough. Now, it's your turn.
He lifted the guarneri and drew a single phrase, letting it hang in the air like a question. The sound wasn't instruction, it was an invitation. The children leaned forward, caught.
It's like the violin is breathing.
It is. Now, let it breathe through you.
Clara closed her eyes and began again. This time, the phrase didn't waver. The room stilled as the old wood and the young girl spoke together. A boy whispered, "She sounds like the violin," and the room smiled. The afternoon sun drew long, quiet rectangles across the floor of the empty youth room. On the hook by the door, the frayed wool coat hung motionless, the thread still remembering movement. Below it, the battered violin case rested on a low shelf, closed with the finality of a chapter ended. The old stickers had been carefully peeled away. Only the deep scuffs and scratches remained. That coat had been his only shelter through 14 winters of wind and indifferent faces. That case had carried a lost guarneri through alleys, basement rooms, and back into the light. Now they stayed here, not abandoned, but deliberately placed as if they had finally arrived. The stillness was not empty. It was the breath after a long, necessary exhale. And though no bow touched string, the silence seemed to hold a faint, sustained note. The street busker was gone. The teacher had only just begun. Marcus passed the youth room door and slowed, the coat and case drawing his gaze like a portrait of old grief. He remembered the audition night, Leo's first note, the way the air went thin, and the chair that caught him.
I spent years fearing him, and he was just afraid of the same empty seats.
He continued to the main hall, catching the orchestra's expectant silence like a rope. When he lifted the baton, the familiar weight felt different, less authority, more invitation. The music poured out, and he stopped chasing the notes, simply letting them breathe. The symphony played, but the man on the podium was no longer defending a fortress. At the final rest, he didn't hurry to fill the quiet. He let it linger. It wasn't a challenge anymore. It was an echo of something Leo had already taught him. And in the youth room, Clara guided the guarneri through a simple scale, the first step of her own story. Months later, the main hall filled with families for a youth concert. Clara stepped forward, the guarneri gleaming under the lights. She raised the bow, and the first note was not a student's imitation. It was a voice the hall recognized. The same wood that had silenced an audition panel now lifted a child's melody into the air, unforced. In the wings, Leo stood without moving, his hands hanging at his sides, steady. At the back of the hall, Marcus leaned against the wall, a faint smile on his lips.
The guarneri was never lost. It was waiting for someone brave enough to let it sing again.
The final note hung, and the audience sat motionless, no one wanting to break it. Then the applause surged, and Clara lowered the violin, looking toward the wings. Leo gave the slightest nod, almost invisible, and Clara smiled as if she had received a medal. The symphony had mocked the street violinist's old case. But his first note had made the conductor sit down, and his last gift was making a child stand up. The audience filtered out, leaving only the hum of the empty hall and the echo of the last note. Clara found Leo in the wings, carefully placing the Guarneri in its battered case.
Will you ever play here again? On this stage, I mean?
He closed the case and didn't speak. Some stages are meant for others now.
He ruffled her hair instead of answering, then picked up the case with the ease of a man who had carried it through far heavier nights. Together, they walked off the stage, the old case swinging gently at his side. The spotlight remained, illuminating an empty chair on the stage, waiting for no one. Tomorrow, the youth room would fill with scales again, and his frayed coat would hang on the hook, exactly where it belonged. The busker who once stood in the rain had found his dry space not in the spotlight, but in the quiet room where music began. And the Guarneri, lost for decades, now had a home where it would sing for generations. The concert hall fell silent for the last time. On the conductor's podium, the old violin case rested where the baton should be. A single spotlight held the battered leather, its scuffs now telling a story instead of a secret. The frayed coat draped over a music stand, its sleeve hanging as if still reaching for the string. No musician stood to bow. No conductor raised a hand, only the quiet invitation that had always been there. In 14 years, Leo Kastner had learned that the only stage that mattered was one where you stopped trying to impress and simply listened. The coat that had been a sign of poverty became a monument to endurance. The case that had been mocked was now an altar of a new beginning, and the conductor, who once sat down in shock, now stood for every note. No longer a rival but a listener. The story didn't end with a solo. It ended with a room full of children who finally knew what music meant. Just listen.